Let's move into the final topic, and we're going to welcome in our boy Jake, a loyal patron, onto the show for the 14th straight month. I think it was last month was the anniversary month of him being a patron for a year. So if you do want to be a patron like Jake, check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. But Jake, welcome into the show.
How you guys doing?
I'm pretty good. How's the family party that you're avoiding?
I'm a bit buzzed. We're good.
Wait, you're at a family party while this is going on?
No. Just my niece and nephew are left downstairs. That's it.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice. But anyways, we're getting buzzed, Jake, and we are ready to talk about the Phoenix Suns because that's Jake's wheelhouse. Jake's a Phoenix Suns fan, proudly, right, Jake?
I wouldn't. I'd be really miserable if I was.
I think most of them are, and if you did see anything from the Phoenix Suns, I think it was like it was like the Phoenix municipal meeting. There was just this old woman who just tore Phoenix Suns owner Robert Sarver a new asshole, calling him Titan and cheap, which was pretty fantastic.
Titan and cheap.
So look it up. But right now the Suns sitting at 5-24. Pretty out of the playoffs, if I could say so myself. If you want to go look back and
the number one pick right now.
If you guys want to go looking back at our first full week of podcast when the NBA season started, we asked a question: could they make the playoffs?
Remember, they were our 19th best team according to our rankings. We always get that comment too.
We need to stop with those rankings because they're really bad. But anyways,
blame the math.
Yeah, I think we just got to. We do every other list objectively, so we just got to do this list objectively. But Phoenix Suns are 5-24, and there was a stretch last week where they scored like 20 points in the first quarter of two games. Absolutely horrible to see. And Jake sent me a very interesting DM saying that Igor, I'm not going to try the last name because I always fuck it up, but Igor Kokoskov, after 29 games, should be fired. So Jake, are you sticking by that hot take that Igor should be canned?
Yeah, as of now, I would say yeah. I mean, it's pretty clear he's already lost the locker room. I mean, he was caught, I wouldn't say arguing, but debating mid-game with Mikal Bridges, and it looks like DeAndre Ayton just doesn't play in the middle of the game. So it looks like he has problems even motivating players, and I think it was 60-17 they were outscored in first quarters in two games, and that's just terrible. You can't, even when the Sixers won 10 games, they weren't that bad. This is one of the worst teams we've ever seen in the NBA, for sure.
I mean, it's been a rough start, and you look at their away stats, and it's not good. They have one win away from Phoenix right now, 4-11 at home, 1-13 away, 0-6 in the division. They have the largest point differential in the NBA right now by -11. Nobody has a positive of +11 either, so just the worst differential either way. You look at them, they've been terrible on the floor, like Jake mentioned, and obviously there's trouble in the locker room. I even heard something that Devin Booker and Ayton were getting into it in the locker room. I don't know how true that is. But it is something that has not been a smooth start for Igor. And looking at the shortest NBA head coaching runs, Jerry Tarkarian, the former UNLV coach, lasted 20 games as a Spurs coach. And then the second longest would be Bob Weiss, who lasted 30 games with the Seattle Supersonics. So Igor would be the second shortest if he was fired right now. But I don't think he's going to get fired right now. But Dave, do you think he should be fired? Do you think maybe they start to look at firing him after this year? Because I personally don't think so. I think he needs a little bit more time. But what do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. Easy bake oven. You just set it and forget it. Wait, that's Ronco, I think. Ronco. You set it and forget it.
It's Ronco.
Oh my! It's late night infomercials from the early 2000s, when you were 4 years old. Don't worry about it. So no, he needs time. That's plain and simple. He needs time because he was given a team without a starting point guard. When you are missing 1/5 of your starting lineup, how do you expect to succeed? Especially in offense like Igor's, which is so predicated on being pass heavy. When you don't have a primary passer out there, primary facilitator. I mean, just you can look at their turnover numbers, and it's direct correlation. They're pass heavy. They try to set up better shots. They try to keep the ball moving. But the problem is when you don't have anyone to really lead that, and you have a really wonky lineup and guys who aren't necessarily engaged all the time, it's just one thing after another, and then losing means less caring. I don't know. The Suns seems in a lot of trouble this year, but I think you need to just get them out there, let them play, and they'll work out those wrinkles.
Did you say lossing?
Lossing.
Losing. There we go. Ricky, what are your thoughts?
I think it's absolutely ludicrous to even suggest
really
that Igor should be anywhere near. What are we taking a chud? Like, are we chudding him to take in an NFL term? Like,
help us with the chud thing. I know who you're talking about.
Where the former Browns coach, after 1 year, got the can and got fired. Like, are we going to chud him? 1 year with Phoenix, he's gone. And like, I look at their team, Austin Rivers, who they just got, could be done at the end of this year. They got Troy Daniels, could be off the contract. Crawford is expiring. They got Bender, Holmes, Moreland, expiring. Kelly Oubre's an RFA. This is a team where you're drafting young talent. DeAndre Ayton, I know that him not really caring right now is a little bit of a red flag, but this isn't new. Like, he was like this at Arizona because he was bored with the competition, because he was so much better than the competition that he was playing against. This is just, he's not winning, so he's bored there. Like Dave says, get yourself a point guard. Like, look at where Igor came from. Why was his system, his offensive system, so good with the Jazz? They had basically 2 ball handlers in Ricky Rubio and Donovan Mitchell that could run that offense. The Suns have 0. That's your problem.
That's
Get a ball handler.
Devin Booker's a ball handler to the same extent that Donovan Mitchell is.
I would say that for me, if you're asking me who I want to run this offense, I'm going to take Donovan Mitchell because I have tape of a better version of this offense. I think Donovan Mitchell in this offense is better than what I've seen with Devin Booker.
Interesting.
If they get a point guard who can do that, and then Devin Booker can play off ball, I think this team would be a little bit better. Adding draft picks, and then the big question is, will free agents, not like a Trevor Ariza, want to come and play for Phoenix?
Of course they're not going to add free agents because it's something that they have never done. Even when they were good, they've not been a big free agent destination.
It's not like LeBron to LA, where it's not like in LA, it's not like
LA
Chicago, it's not like a New York, it's not that
Phoenix
big mecca
sexy
of a city.
But even that, not even the city part, but even you look at what that organization in general, there's even talks about them moving to Las Vegas, moving to Seattle. Sarver saying that they might pull out. It's not intriguing for any player, especially because you're not sure if you're going to be moving after you move. So you might be like, oh, hey, I'm going to Philadelphia to Phoenix. Oh, now it's time to go to Seattle. Like you're also buying in on this organization, and the structure of this organization is a complete mess as well. Because obviously you have a GM in his first year in James Jones, and they just fired their GM 5 days before the season too, and Ryan McDonough.
Yep.
So this whole organization is a mess. So clearly they're not going to be able to get free agents. And through the draft, we haven't seen much success. And I don't think I can put that faith into James Jones because we haven't seen a draft out of him yet. And with McDonough, he had some picks, especially this year, that I really did like. I mean, he had DeAndre Ayton, pretty easy pick in some ways. Some people will say Luka, but I think with the idea of what they were trying to do, I don't think it was the worst thing. Like, if there was any other person you could pick in this draft, it was Ayton. And I'll still stick by that, although he hasn't looked great. At least compared to Luka. I still think there was nice picks. Obviously, Mikal Bridges has been a good pick, especially compared to who you drafted for, and you got the unprotected Heat pick for that as well. And then you also, I'm sorry, they gave up the Heat pick, but I still like Mikal over Zaire. And then the Okubo pick, I think he's a project, but I still think he's going to be someone who turns out to be good. And we talk about the point guard situation. They're like 18th in assists, which isn't terrible, but Dave, you talked about it with the turnovers, dead last, just below just in front of the Atlanta Hawks. So this is something that they're not moving the ball efficiently, and that's exactly what they need. But I don't think it's again on fully Igor to be the burden of moving this ball a little bit better because he's not out there able to do it because the talent really isn't there.
Shouldn't he adapt? I guess my argument is shouldn't he adapt his offense to fit the talent around the team because we know what his offense wants to be because we've seen, like Ricky said, we've seen it in the past iteration. And now it feels like he's trying to force this offensive system of pass-heavy ball movement onto a team without a true point guard and a bunch of really young players who are very mistake-prone. So I feel like part of it is like, square peg, round hole. He's just trying to make this work because that's the way he's seen success in the past. And I feel like as a young coach, you might not want to, concede a little bit of what's worked for you in the past, but you have to realize where you're at and what talent is around you. Because we joked about Fred Hoiberg, not being given the talent around him to make his system work, and I feel like this is going to be in a very similar vein of you need to understand what's around you, and you can't say that we're going to run this team into the ground. Because
even with that, though, I don't know what offense would work. But Jake, we'll go to you just because obviously, you know, the talent might not be there, and maybe he's not making the right coaching adjustments. But do you think, though, like even if with any offense, this team would just be a failure? Because again, I think the talent discrepancy is more apparent than any coaching flaws that are shown through Igor.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think Igor was almost set up for failure. I don't think this marriage was quite a match because, like Dave said, with the ball movement heavy offense, Devin Booker doesn't fit into that. He just doesn't. He's more of an ISO player. I mean, you saw that in past years when he could score, not really efficiently, but he could score in bulks because he could play ISO basketball. And I don't think DeAndre Ayton really is a great guy in a ball movement offense. I think he's more of a guy who should just post up and use in the pick and roll and everything like that. I think I almost related to when Phil Jackson was the Knicks GM and he tried to force a triangle offense onto them, and it just wasn't their system. It didn't work, and Igor hasn't shown any ability to adapt his offense to fit his players, which is worrying to me because I feel. I mean, if they go and get a point guard, is that really going to change a lot? Because Devin Booker is still going to be turnover heavy. DeAndre Ayton still not going to be getting the ball in the positions that he should be getting the ball, and the point guard really won't change that much in my mind.
And one thing, too, with this whole thing, because Ricky even brought it up with the contract situations, with Oubre even being moved because they just acquired him in the Trevor Ariza deal. Looking back on this Ariza deal, I think it's absolutely horrible. Again, I don't understand the point of giving him $15 million when you're expecting to lose. And I don't blame Trevor Ariza at all. You just got paid $15 million, and you weren't going to make that money anywhere else. But the one thing I do wonder is, what can they do at least with Oubre, because that is a valuable piece. So can they do something to get a point guard to help this offense in some ways, or help this talent differential? And given what is his talent and the fact that he's going to be an RFA, he can be moved before the deadline. The bargaining agreement does prevent the Suns from packaging Oubre with another player by then, but he was so recently acquired. They can trade him by himself immediately. So is there a certain player that you think that, hey, maybe we could do Oubre for a point guard straight up? Obviously, the Nets signed Dinwiddie, so that wouldn't be a move that's out there. But any point guards you think that could help this team? Do you think they need a veteran? Do you think they need a young guy? Jake, we'll go to you first.
I mean, I'd say Fultz is the obvious one, right? I mean, if you can move a pick in Oubre for Fultz, I mean, I would do that in a heartbeat. I wouldn't do that as a Sixers fan, but if I'm the Suns, I would do that in a heartbeat. I don't really think there's too many guys that are out on the market because, I mean, every single team right now is basically in playoff contention besides the Suns. So not a lot of teams are going to be willing to move their point guard. And, I mean, Fultz is the obvious one, though. You look at, you don't know what you're going to get from him, but is it really worth hanging on to Kelly Oubre to take a shot to get Fultz?
Really quick, the Chicago Bulls would also like a word with teams that are outside of the playoff contention.
Sorry, I forgot they're in the NBA. My bad.
I was going to say the Bulls.
Would you like one slightly used Jabari Parker? Anyone? Anyone?
But with the Oubre and Fultz thing, to you real quick, Jake, would you want Oubre on your team if it does mean? And obviously, you mentioned you wouldn't want to do that deal straight up if you're the Sixers. But would you want Oubre at all?
Yeah, 100. Have you seen the wings off the Sixers bench? We got Furkan Korkmaz, Demetrius Jackson, and Shake Milton. Like, TJ McConnell's been our best bench player, and as much as I love TJ, that is terrible to say.
So is there a player or a package that you think that you would be comfortable moving for Oubre?
That's the sad part. I don't think so. I mean, maybe Zaire Smith, but I don't think anybody's trading for a 20-pound lighter Zaire Smith right now. Nobody even knows what's happening with him. Maybe we can trade that Heat pick back. I have no idea.
God.
I don't know if there really is because the Sixers don't have a lot of unless they're not going to do a deal for another wing because that's most of what the Sixers would have. They would only be looking to unload Wilson Chandler or Furkan Korkmaz or something like that. But I don't really. Fultz is really the only option, and as of now, we don't know what he's going to be in 4 or 5 weeks when he comes back. So as of now, I wouldn't do the deal. But who knows? If he comes back and still sucks, then maybe I consider it.
Dave, I'll go to you. What do you think about Fultz being thrown out there? And you don't have to keep this strictly to Oubre. But, I mean, what other moves do you think they can make this year to at least somewhat slighten the blow or lessen the blow? And then also with that, what do you think about just Fultz in general to the Suns?
So I think that Fultz is obviously an interesting topic because of his potential recovery right now. And that's a lot of people will want to asterisk that with, is this really it? Was it a stab in the dark, diagnosis? I'm going to go into the assumption that it's correct, that this is the correct thing. he was going under treatment for something that did affect him, and this will hopefully resolve it to some extent, but he might never be the player that we saw him be in college. So I would say that absolutely I would jump at the opportunity to move a Kelly Oubre plus something to get Markelle Fultz on this team to pair with obviously Devin Booker, Ayton, and there are 18 other wings. So 100% in on that, Jake. I give you credit for bringing that up because I know as a Sixers fan, giving up, admitting defeat on that pick is tough. But I think at the end of the day, that's what they need. They don't need a backup point guard right now because TJ can do it. They need someone who can go help them on the wing. Like you said, Wilson Chandler's just playing like a bum right now. He's had a rough time. I mean, we hope that he'll kind of go back to what he was, but he just doesn't look like he fits out there. So yeah, the Fultz one, interesting for me. I lean towards point guard, and I know I brought up before, you look at the Clippers, and I see Milos not playing many minutes, and I know that's a contract where he may or may not stay another year. So it's a 1-year thing. You get a mentor on that team who's experienced, who can play minutes, and then I like continuing to develop DeAnthony Melton because I think that kid is actually going to be a starting point guard at some point in his career. So I think Milos would be a fairly cheap pickup. The other guy I look at is Jeremy Lin because if you have visited the Hawks subreddit and read anything coming out of there, is he gets a lot of love and there's a lot of controversy internal. It's nothing crazy, but there's a lot of fan controversy over who should be playing more minutes and taking minutes away from Jeremy Lin, all this garbage with Trae Young, developing as a player. So I think that one would be really intriguing because it gives the Hawks another piece in Kelly Oubre who can contribute at a decent level, and like you said, he's still under that rookie contract, so they do have control over his future rights. So if he balls out for them, awesome. The Hawks have another great piece for that team, and Jeremy Lin could add in a veteran point guard to this team and honestly take them from the worst team in the West to the second or third worst team in the West.
Now, if I know Ricky Widmer, I threw out the mention of trades. So he's on ESPN's trade machine working on a deal.
He's on the spot rack.
I'm not even working. I'm not even looking at
John
trades.
Wall.
I'm shocked. Are you feeling okay?
Yeah, the thing that I'm looking at is the thing we have to remember with the Suns is they're young. You look at Dev Book, he's the number one for this team. He's only 22. That is, to me, a baby in the league. You are still a very young player. And I was kind of thrown around just on my computer. I started with the top, LeBron and Michael. How long did it take these two guys to get to the playoffs? Didn't take them long. With Jordan, it was actually a different situation, different team. He was in the playoffs rookie year as Rookie of the Year. LeBron, I think it took 2 years. In his third year, he made it to the playoffs. One of the comparable things, I'm okay, next, look at guys that were drafted the same kind of area as Devin Booker, 15th, and have that same kind of, I want to say, not star power, but that same famous popularity around them. Giannis, to me, is a great comparison because Giannis his first year was 13-14, where they didn't make the playoffs. That next year they did, and then in 15, 16, 16, 17 was when Giannis kind of really became what Giannis is. However, that's also a team that's been playoffs, not, and then recently 2 and been knocked out in the first round. The difference with that is the Suns are not run the same as the Bucks, so you can't take A to A and say, oh, these are both apples. It's apples to oranges. But I don't know in my head if I am thinking, all right, this team is just young, and as they mature together, hopefully they'll mature with Coach Igor, and it'll be fine. Or if the Suns might be in a situation down the line where if they don't get their shit together, eventually they're going to hit a wall where it's we got to trade Dev Book. And I don't want to see that happen to the Suns, for Suns fans out there, because that would be a sad day, as if they wasted Devin Booker's contract trying to figure it out.
My thing is, I understand where you're coming from with the Giannis thing. I don't think it's a bad comparison in some ways.
Obviously, they're not the same player.
Well, that's the thing is, Giannis was drafted as a project, and then he didn't put up 22 points until his fourth year. Devin Booker came in second year and did that. And also, he was seeing Giannis as a project. It seemed like Milwaukee was taking a shot at him. And then, obviously, he grew, and they put time into him, and he grew up and obviously had the development he did. Devin Booker was naturally just came in, dominated right away. He's not going to be at the level Giannis is, at least the way Giannis is dominating right now. But Devin Booker can be and has been a starting player for any team in the NBA for the past 3 years. Where Giannis, it took him 4 years to get to that point. And the big thing too with Giannis is he's adapted to and kind of adopted Milwaukee as a second home, where Devin Booker doesn't talk about Phoenix that way. And we even heard before he signed that extension that he was not really really in love with what the Suns were doing as a front office. So this is something that I could see if Devin Booker does get frustrated enough in the upcoming years. Pulls a Jimmy Butler, pulls a Kawhi Leonard, because it's been done before. And I don't think he's a top 10 player like Kawhi and Jimmy Butler are, or top 10, top 15. But I think he is close enough where he can force that ability, because again, it's Phoenix. It's not like this is
I go direct comp to Anthony Davis, and I know they're drafted differently, but Anthony Davis is a guy who we forever talk about. This man is trapped on a team that can't build around him. So that's my direct parallel to the Phoenix Suns.
Him and Drew Holiday and Ray John last year still bring them to the playoffs. DeMarcus Cousins did help too.
Yeah, but he was 24 last year. So two more years.
But they also,
and they had a second All-Star on that team at that point.
He was 22 when they first went though.
Right, they had broke out 1 year earlier. So yes, I think it was 22 and then 24 because they missed the 23 year.
2015. He was 21.
Jeremy Lin year.
He was 21.
Okay,
2015. He played 43 minutes in 4 games. Put up 31 as a 21-year-old in the playoffs.
Phenomenally talented, but they couldn't assemble a good team around him. And I think that sort of speaks to what Devin Booker's struggling with. Obviously, he doesn't have the same level of front office and ownership issues as Anthony Davis had to go through, but it still points to the thing is look, there's these guys in these smaller markets where they really struggle to build a team around them, and the Pelicans gave in and were like, screw the draft, we're going to go out and we're going to spend that as capital to try to go get guys in trades and free agency.
And veterans.
And veterans at that. So they traded for Drew Holiday. They traded for Boogie. They went ahead and grabbed Rondo in free agency. That's how that team pushed through and had their best run in the playoffs.
And Nico, too.
And Nico, another trade. So I wonder if, James Jones will be forced into making moves
Trading
because
for veterans.
we keep talking about building through the draft, and, I'm sorry, the Suns have been in the top end of the draft for a lot of years now for very little results. So I wonder if, part of this whole new GM and new coach this is year one. See who's valuable, see how everything goes, and then just churn.
And one thing too is with Drew Holiday or Darren Collison, some of these guys didn't immediately hit as rookies, and obviously they weren't projects. Most of them played pretty long careers in college. But then I start looking at guys recently who haven't panned out in their current places, but maybe do need a change of scenery. Markelle is obviously one we brought up too, and then Frank. I know he's not a super pass heavy guard. He's not really great offensively yet. But defensively, he's already there, and there's been spurts here and there where he has been able to show that shot. He had 21 very recently.
Responded to that triple DNP, and he came out angry.
So maybe you just find guys who need changes of scenery, and maybe guys like Nico who didn't work out at their current place, and they just need that next jump. Maybe you look for guys like that.
One question I want to throw out, and I'm going to apologize beforehand.
And Jake, you can answer this
because
first.
Suns fans are going to get triggered by this. I can already tell it. But I'm asking it because I thought about it. It was a flame that ignited, and it was small, and I was like, I shut that down really quick. But because Sean brought up the name Jimmy Butler, it's coming back up, and I want to ask the question of, put it in this way, is let's say the Phoenix Suns in the crystal ball become NBA champions.
What?
Do you see Devin Booker as the number one on that team? Kind of like the same debate we had with Jimmy Butler. Is Devin Booker a true number one for an NBA team? Is that a question we can throw out there, or is it too soon because he's too young? Or will he fall into the same mold, like you said, of Jimmy Butler? Because we had that debate where you were on the side of, no, Jimmy Butler is not a number one for a championship NBA team.
Jake, what do you think?
See, I'm on the fence with Devin Booker because I need to see what he could do on a good team. Because I know he can put up numbers and he can look like a top 5 shooting guard on a bad team and put up really impressive numbers, but he hasn't shown anything where I would be confident in a 7-game series, him having the ball in the last 2 minutes every game. I don't know if he's that guy, and he could be, and I could be completely wrong, but we haven't seen him. He has to be on a team that wins more than 15 games a year. You can't judge a guy putting up 25 points a game on inefficient scoring on a bad team because, Michael Carter-Williams won Rookie of the Year on a bad team in the Sixers. You just don't know. You can't tell yet.
Yeah, and I mean, you even look at Booker's stats this year, and obviously, you talk about the inefficiency, 43% from the field, which isn't terrible, but then 31% from three, which is not good, and 84% from the line, which is taking a dip from 87 last year. But you even look at the assist numbers too. Like Devin Booker isn't truly a 7-assist guy a night. Like he's not a player that when you think of a 7-assist guy, you think of someone who's effectively moving the ball, like LeBron James. LeBron James throughout his career has averaged 7 assists per game. Completely different ways that ball moves and that ball gets to those assists, and that's something that we even talked about with these draft prospects. The fact that I think it was Ja Morant, and someone was saying Ja has 5 turnovers per game, so that makes him he's not a capable one. Well, it's like sometimes you either are turning the ball over because you're forcing it a ton and you're trying to make the most out of your talent that you do have on your team, and then even with the assist, like you can just make one pass to a cutting guy in an ISO formation, and then it's nothing that you're doing, you're just ISO and you see a guy open and you make a pass that anyone can make. So again, I don't think of Devin Booker as a guy who's actually ever going to put up 7 assists as a number one. And I don't think he is a number one per se either, just because, like Jake said, he hasn't hit that big shot because he hasn't been in that big moment. We don't know what he'll be like in that big moment. But with Jimmy Butler, that I think I did overlook, he was hitting those big shots. He was in those moments, and he was rising to the occasion. And that's something that he's continued to do. And obviously he did it in Philadelphia twice, and when he came back. He did it in Minnesota as well, and he led that team. I don't know if he has that next level gear to him. So right now, I would say no. Can he? Yes, because he's only 22 years old. But again, I think that I'm going to need to see more out of Devin Booker before I say he is the number one on an NBA championship team. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I don't know if he'll be a number one on a championship team. It's just that's a lot to put on a 22-year-old.
Well, it's not really like
is
championship.
Is he the number one on a team on this Phoenix team going forward for the next couple of years? Absolutely.
But that's different because this team
I would
sucks.
say like if they became like
a playoff team,
like
Phoenix,
if they're a championship contender, do you think just this any team, do you think that Devin Booker can be on a championship contending team as a number one player? Can he be like a Steph Curry, like a Jimmy Butler, like a Joel Embiid, like a LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook?
You're naming a lot of
Anthony
really great
Davis,
players,
like
and I don't know that he can be. I don't think
is he ever going to be great? Is he going to be very good? Good.
He will be very good. I'll go very good. He's not going to be. I don't know that he'll be great because, like Jake was saying, it's volume scoring, volume numbers on a terrible team, and until we see this team hit playoff mode. Like, if they get there next year, if they get the year after, like, when we see this team hit 40-plus wins and be in the race for the playoffs, that's when we get to see who he is. Like, I don't think we'll have an answer on this one for the next 2-3 years, probably because I don't foresee this team being a competitive towards a championship team until they fill out this roster with actual talent.
Well, and for me, when we did a couple weeks ago, the best fits for the Suns when it comes to the draft.
Right.
And of course we throw out the joke like Zion Williamson. Good night, everybody.
Yep.
But really, to me, Zion is the guy for Phoenix. Like any other, all the other ones, it's like, oh, if I don't get Zion, like I can get RJ, I can get Cam. But the reason why I say that is what Zion is going to bring with him. The kind of, like, he's bringing the cameras, he's bringing the lights, he's bringing the hype. All the cameras are going to be on him. That might be good for Dev Book. Like, hey, you know what? I've been under the spotlight so much in Phoenix where people look at Phoenix, look at the struggles. Who's the first one they look to? Me. Zion can be the hype machine, be the one to suck in all that attention. DeAndre Ayton, maybe if they start winning, he can play well if that connection works with him and Zion, makes him excited. And Devin Booker can kind of be a little bit out of the limelight and just be Devin Booker. And just but that would be a thing of, does Devin Booker want to be the one of the Suns?
I feel like you have feelings on this.
Well, and just the last thing I want to say is, does Devin Booker want to be the one, or would he be okay with somebody coming in and being like, no, I'm going to be the number one on this team, and stepping aside and being the number two?
Go ahead, Jake.
Oh, God, it's about to be hot take season.
Thank you.
All right, well, talking about Zion, I had this conversation with Sean. I don't think Zion's ever going to be the best player on a championship team. I don't think that's his role. I just don't. I don't think he's ever going to be the guy who's going to have the ball in his hands for most of the game. I don't think he's ever going to be the guy who's going to be taking the last shot because he's like Ben Simmons. He's a better shooter than Ben Simmons, but he's not a consistent shooter. I mean, Devin Booker is that kind of guy who's going to take the last shot but are you comfortable with the ball in his hands for the last 2 minutes and him not turning the ball over? The other thing I wanted to say was, I think DeAndre Ayton has the bigger chance of being a superstar than Devin Booker. I think Devin Booker is a star. I don't think he's a superstar. I don't think he's at next level. I think DeAndre Ayton, direct comparison with Joel Embiid. I think he looks very good. He's shooting 58% in his rookie year. I think it's more of the system, which is why people are kind of doubting him and thinking that he's not great because he's not getting the ball in the post. He's having the Joel Embiid effect. He's not getting the ball in the post enough, and he's getting the ball in the perimeter a lot, and that doesn't play to his strengths. And then also, Sean brought up the name. I know when you get the number 1 pick, you're supposed to take the best player available, but I don't think I'm crazy in saying that John Morant is literally the perfect fit for this team. I don't think Zion, another ball-dominant guy, especially with Igor's system, is another ball-dominant guy going to help him with that ball movement that they need with Booker, Ayton, and Zion. I think John Morant is literally the absolute perfect fit for them, but again, if they get the number 1 pick, I'm going to highly doubt they take John Morant.
Should they trade the pick then?
Depends what they can trade down
Trade
with
back,
too.
Yeah, trade back, because I don't think you take Ja at number 1.
Warren Parker in the pick for.
Hold on. If they get the number 1 pick, they're not trading it. They're taking Zion Williamson.
Have we ever seen a 1 traded out of?
Do you remember Markelle Fultz?
Markelle Fultz.
I think that's the dig you're trying. I thought you were trying to dig at Jake.
No, Dave's just stupid.
I was blanking.
I thought that was a dig at Jake.
Nope. No,
it would have been great for us to dig at Jake. I was literally like blank. I forgot this last year happened.
No, but no, go add.
I would say I understand Zion's he's a transcendent player. He's great. He's generational talent. But I'll like him to Ben Simmons. I don't think Ben Simmons will ever be the best player on a championship team. I think he's a really, really, really good number 2. I don't think he's number 1. And Devin Booker could be number 1. We just don't know yet. I don't think Zion's ever going to be the guy who he might have the most attention on him, but I don't think he's the best player on the team.
Here's the thing, real quick. I agree with you in some parts, and I disagree here in some parts. But one thing I do want to ask is, I think that was the one point that Ricky was trying to get to with the whole, Zion is not going to be a ball handler. He's not going to be he's going to be a ball dominant guy. And he's not going to be the guy, but he's also not going to be the guy who takes the last minute shot. I think that's something where Devin Booker could take over, and Devin Booker could be that guy who does that for them, kind of like Jimmy Butler. Maybe Joe is the number 1 on the Philadelphia 76ers. They have so much fucking talent; it's tough to see who is a true number 1 on that team. But even then, is Ben the most valuable? Is Jimmy the most valuable? Is Joe the most valuable? It could just be something where Ayton does turn into a guy who is a monster down low. He's a guy that absolutely dominates there. Devin Booker turns into the offensive side of Jimmy Butler, and then Zion turns into, I don't think he'll ever be the passer that Ben Simmons is, and I agree with you there. But maybe he does turn into that person who does keep the ball moving. He does keep the defense waiting and patient because you know how explosive he can be. I think that, again, if you are the number 1, if you're in the number 1 spot, there's no way you cannot take Zion Williamson. Yeah, I think that goes for any team. I agree. And I have changed my mind about that because I know I was trying to make a case for RJ. But I think it's tough to not go with that, and maybe if they're not number 1, then you go John Morant. But I think that Zion does end up being a better fit when you think about it. But then again, I don't know if Devin Booker and Ayton can work together. I don't know if Ayton and Zion would be able to work together. And I don't know if Devin Booker and Zion could work together. So I have questions even about what this team's going to look like in 3 years, and whether Igor is the coach or not the coach. But what's up?
I was going to say, I couldn't, what is the floor spacing going to be if you have DeAndre, Zion, and Devin Booker? I don't know. I could be pessimistic. Like I said, I think.
The thing is, the spacing's fine right now with the Sixers, right? Even before before Jimmy came, it was fine because, Ben isn't a guy that is working always in the post. Same with Joe. Joe's not always working in the post.
But for the Suns.
But Zion,
I know,
DeAndre,
I know, but I'm saying I'm saying that Ben Simmons, even though he can't shoot, is not always working in the post. Zion's going to be the same way. He's going to be working on the wing. And DeAndre Ayton, he's not always working in the post. So I think the spacing can be cleared out a little bit. And even Booker, can work from the outside. Yeah. He can drive in. He could run ISO, offensively. So I'm just saying they can create that space, even though none of them are 3-point shooters. Yeah. And we really haven't seen Ayton take a 3. But he had some resemblance of a J. So I think that, again, that could be knocked out because these guys are so young that, even Zion's not a great shooter, but he's better than a Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
So I think that there is a mold to say that you can still have floor spacing and still have the ability to be a decent team that's in the modern NBA without having great shooters.
And you do have guys like Dev Book, T.J. Warren, Oubre, Mikhail that can like
T.J. Warren just started making threes.
that can just
But he's making an
spread it
incredible
out.
clip.
I know, like right now, it's been like those are guys that you're hoping, hey, can help spread the floor out, and especially like I look at a guy at Mikhail Bridges as he develops as an NBA player. Like we were drafting him and putting him in mocks as the perfect 3-and-D type player. Like he comes in for his defense and his threes. Like that's what all the scouts were looking at when it came to him. So it's like they got guys that can help space the floor, even if they've got DeAndre and Zion.
All right. Dave, what do you think?
I just think that you guys are starting to change my mind as far as DeAndre being the number one on that team and his potential, and that maybe they should, the big thing with him is obviously his engagement, and like I feel kind of bad because we picked on him early in the draft process about that.
Can a number one have that kind of attitude, though? I don't think so.
And now it's biting them in the back. I think a lot of it's losing. You get disinterested when you lose, and like, but a true
leader.
That's what I was trying to say. Cannot say words, Ricky.
Okay.
Cannot say words. A true leader wouldn't. A true leader wouldn't get disinterested in basketball because it's his passion. You would see him out there yelling and screaming at his teammates like great leaders do in the NBA. Like that's how you motivate as a leader at that level. And his disinterest shows a lack of passion in my mind, and I want to write it off to being a young kid. I think that's, in my mind, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that behalf because, like, it's the Suns. They've been losing for years. Why would one person change that? Well, you look at other teams that have had highly impactful draft picks, and one guy can make a difference in the NBA. That's the level of impact. There's only 5 guys on the court from your team at once, and 1/5 of that can change the world. So I think that this Suns team needs to... Honestly, I think Igor needs to evolve his game plan. I think his offense needs to change to better fit around Ayton, and I think that they, as a team, need to realize that Melton is probably the guy that they're going to go with in the future. They, in the last 5 or 6 games, have given him some more run room, and he's been playing okay. I think Igor's got 1 more year. Well, I think it's literally he's on the clock for the end of next year because this roster won't look anything like it does right now at this point in time next year. So like,
yeah, but then I question. You even look what happened with Hornacek. You look what happened with Earl Watson. I mean, like they have not had stability in the head coaching spot at all.
Right.
And I think that if you believe in the guy, then you have to give him 3 years at the minimum.
So you're on the Fred Hoiberg rule then. Like, we will struggle through bad because we're hoping that at some point something will click.
But even with Fred, and we talked about this already, it's just we saw 3 different iterations of the same team, and they were like, oh, well, we don't like the culture that he's building. So if you like the culture he's building, then yeah, struggle. Because if you believe in the coach, which I don't think Garpax and I don't think they fully did at the end, if you believe in him right now, then give him that time because it's going to be good for DeAndre Ayton. It's going to be good for Devin Booker. It's going to be good who you pick this year to grow under the same coach. So if you believe in the guy, you believe in the culture, you have to stick with him because you can't just keep firing guys. It'd be like Devin Booker's 4th coach, and he's only 23 after this year. So that's my biggest thing with that is if you believe in him and you see that he's making necessary changes and he's connecting with the guys, which we don't fully know if he is or not, then I think you can stick with him. But if he's not doing any of that, then you can can him.
And I don't mean to throw this kind of pipe bomb out there because it's a loaded question of I think it comes down to what's the problem? The coach, or kind of what Dave was hitting with DeAndre, but you can also bring Dev Book into this because, like you had mentioned, Sean, even when he signed that extension, it wasn't like that same attitude that like Giannis had, where Giannis is Milwaukee is my home and this is what I want to, like I am here for this city. Like haven't got that same vibe from Devin Booker. Is it the coach's fault, or does this team have a true leader on it? And I mean, yes, the team is young, so
they
they're
try
all
to have
growing
Trevor
together.
Ariza be that leader.
And look at what happened. Well, Trevor
Even
Ariza
he
was
got
also
disinterested.
Like that's another thing. Like there's
what does that say?
I don't think the coach is the problem with the Phoenix Suns. That's what I think.
Tyson Chandler left too. And,
yeah,
I mean
Crawford's quitting on your team.
Crawford's the only guy that so far has been on that team. Is that it is a veteran? That's a statement that he's a veteran on the team.
And Ryan Anderson. He's on the team.
Ryan literally got benched.
But he's on the team.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Doesn't have an option.
I don't think he's a
He's getting paid
leader.
$19 million to not play basketball.
Amir Seek is also on a team, but not really. Final thoughts. We'll go to Jake first.
I would, like you brought up Fred Hoiberg, I would bring it back to Kokoskov. I think that's how you say it.
Fuck, dude, your guess is better than mine.
Igor.
Yeah. he is being set up for failure, and they don't have a GM, which is almost better than having Garpax as your GM. But I just think that I think he's being set up for failure. I think he's lost the locker room, and when you lose the locker room and when you can't get your own players motivated to play, that's on the coach. I blame the coach. I know that players might be unwilling to play like DeAndre Ayton, but that comes down to the coach. You have to get them motivated, no whether you're 4-25 or 25-4. And getting the locker room back is probably one of the hardest things to do in pro sports. So I give him probably till the end of this year, maybe the middle of next year. And I mean, I don't trust Melton. I don't think he's a future point guard. So I don't know where they're going to go. I think the Suns are just a heaping pile of trash right now.
He might get in a whole 85 games like Earl Watson. That's not wrong. They are a heaping pile of trash right now. I mean, the owners are already threatening to move. The players don't want to play. The coaches don't want to coach. I mean, I don't think that statement's wrong. Dave, final thoughts?
I think that I would not start looking to kick Igor out until we see what James Jones can do with a full offseason and what they can do building a team towards Igor. Because you got to remember, like, the sign of Igor, we all thought that was, like, day one was like, oh, Luka's going to the Suns. And it's like, nope, Ayton was too much to pass up on.
Yeah.
Fair, but they didn't really have a roster around that. So I want to see, like, an offseason with Igor in mind and what they can do with all these young assets.
And even with that, they build out this roster, they get an offseason, maybe they just do what they did to Ryan McDonough and just be like, oh, hey, 2 weeks before the game, 2 weeks before the season starts, we'll fire. Ricky, final thoughts? My
final thoughts is Igor's not the problem. I think that right now they're a young team, and it's Igor's first year. Rome wasn't built in a day, and I think eventually it's going to be the question will turn not just like first it's going to be like you said with the culture. You're right on the nail on the head, but also it's going to be turned to Devin Booker and be like, hey, what are you? Like, are you the number one to this team? Are you the leader? Because if they keep struggling, eventually they're going to hit a wall where it's like, all right, we got to try to move you because we're going to lose you at the end of this extension.
Eventually, I hope the Caesar of Rome, a.k.a. Robert Sarver, gets canned in some way possible.
How do you oust an owner?
I don't know. Maybe they leak some racist shit. You got to do something because the Phoenix Suns fans deserve better than Robert Sarver.
I was like, honestly, wouldn't be surprised.
Or if he does what Michael Jordan did to Malik Monk. Just hit him on the back of the head.
Yeah,
that would also
I don't think Sarver shows up to the games like Jordan does.
No.
No.
Especially not sitting courtside. My final thoughts outside of that, though, is, Jake, what do you want for Marcus Morris in fantasy? You want to do Drummond for Marcus Morris straight up?
You can take him, dude. I honestly don't pay attention.
Giddy up.
Trade's going in
right
now.
Cool. That's going to do it for the Fast Break podcast. And then we're going to end on a high note. We're going to end on the high note of we got trade. Drummond off our team. And guess what? Marcus Morris shooting 86% from the free throw line.
Hey, I'll take it.
Boom. All right. We want to thank Jake for joining us. As always, Jake, it was a fun time. We are closing in on that exclusive and elaborate March Patreon podcast, which we are extremely excited about. If you do want to be on a podcast like Jake, check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. Thank you again to Jake, for Ricky, for Dave. I'm Sean Anderson. We want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.